welcome to a slightly out of sync episode of LAWhammer. And by that I mean, we're recording this a little bitty after we originally intended to, purely because of a mixture of tech, illness, nurgle, idiocy, whatever else you might try to call to mind. But the question is, what episode are we going to be slightly out of sync recording today? And the answer is Elrick. Hey, so this is episode 42.3, Forging Forward, an episode that if you happen to have been one of our patrons and following, you'll note that we mentioned months ago in terms of when we were originally intending to record this. If you're watching this later, however, this is perfectly in sync. This was not an issue. So, not all Tales of episodes are made the same. You'll note that some of ours are super short discussions. Some of ours are big, long, meandering chats between two NPCs. Some of them are pure action as they go from place to place to place to place. Others are this episode. This episode,
short and sharp.
Yeah, this episode could be super short. And I mean, you're probably looking at the timing of the episode in the corner going, is there really an episode here? And the answer is, yes, of course there is, because it's not just about those big, long, meandering conversations. It's also about how well do we do at forging all those pointy things that you have to make. So, your, master, I suppose would be the best way of describing her, had set you to a task, which was to create 20 blades, 20 short knives. And this is something that Elrick has already had a little bit of experience with when he was back in the Gold College, but doesn't have a great deal of experience with. And here, he has an opportunity, under the careful guidance of not her, but actually Arthur, taking you through the process of how to create simple blades. And in this case, the process you're given is a simple, it's not welding, it's forge welding, of two metals to get yourself a medium grain steel with a wrought iron back, batter them together underneath heat using a hammer, and then shape that into an edge down one side, bring it to a point up the top, and battering that into place underneath heat again, and then shaping that whole thing afterwards once it's in place, involving a mixture of grinding, polishing, and similar. Then afterwards, hardening it. Now, as we know, Elrick has got an advantage that others don't, but the first blade will be made under far more typical circumstances. You're going to be using the forge to heat and then understanding what temperature is required. The ability of actually to heat up to that temperature is actually quite limited. Actually doesn't go to super, super hot temperatures. But what it can do is it can finally manipulate and control the temperatures to ensure that you get the exact temperature you're looking for. So using the forge and then manipulating the actuary within is something that Elrick's quite excited to try.
Yeah, and has done.
Yeah, totally. And exactly how is that going to work in terms of the overall output of the heat and the quenching, and can he quench it to the same degree by yanking all of the actually out of it, or is that something that's going to be almost on spell level in terms of an instant pooling, in that will he need to do some words of magic on top of the channeling? He doesn't know.
There's channeling an active volcano. It's impossible, right?
Yeah, quite. And pulling out that much heat from a very small amount of metal feels like it shouldn't be beyond his capabilities. But at the same point, he knows through his practice at the college that super flash heat and flash pull out of heat generally requires some form or component of the words of magic, which causes the material realm to do something it wouldn't normally do. Now, pulling it out gradually, he has no doubts he can do that at all. But he's really interested in, can I just yank? He's aware that inside his grimoire, there's spells like Flash Cook, for example, which can take something and then just instantly heat it. It doesn't make good meals, but it does make hot meals.
And he can do it with his drinks.
Exactly. And he can do something similar. And all of those require generally a very quick, the smallest amount of articulation of the words of magic. Not a full extension of it, but just enough so that when he channels down, it focuses that channeling and beads it into a small bubble of reality that causes it to go to an extent. Do it longer. and that's a bigger extent. Then pull it out longer and longer until eventually you're actually forming basic heated spaces. Fireballs being intensely heated spaces under hopefully a controlled environment, assuming that it all works. Yeah. But down in the forge, we have some blades to make. And underneath the tutelage of Arthur, it's a surprisingly easy process. It is, however, quite time-consuming. He reckons that your average beginner will take anything from half a day to a day per blade. But he recommends doing it in batches. Do 3 at once, and then when it comes to the actual grinding, polishing, and shaping, that's just time on each one. But when it comes to the forging, you're putting one in, taking out, bash, bash, as the next one goes in, bash, 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 bash. Next one goes in, bash, 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 bash. And he, at least for the first couple, is more than willing to help you out. He also gives you the basic form for how to take the tang of the blade, the pointy bit, to put the handle onto. And it's a very basic handle, a wooden one, which would be a wooden square block to begin with, and then using the pump shaper as you sit there, eventually turning that block into a circle and putting a brass end on the end of it for durability. Because Valora does not like artifacts of any type going out of her forge that aren't going to last. And she doesn't like the tang just simply being a point and glued into place. She also likes it having a couple of holes through it and then a brass rod pass through and then pump.
Better balance.
Quite. Plus it also means that it's not going to move and it's not going to fall out. There's nothing worse than a blade that falls away from its handle. And as she's happy to grumble and note, most human blades fall apart.
They don't last 500 years.
No, they don't. Nor do they last normally more than a few years, which is, as far as she's concerned, just not cool. This adds a slightly longer and multiple steps to the process, particularly at the finishing aspect of it. So instead of it being a nice easy test, it's a little bit longer in terms of the number of successes required, but it does mean that you hopefully have a slightly better blade. The actual blade he shows you is pretty simple. It's about so long. It's just a blade that goes to a point, one edge only, to ensure that it doesn't take as long, because double edge would obviously take much longer. It also means that you can have the steel edge and the wrought iron off edge, which won't matter, with a nice round handle, pins through, and a brass end. It all looks easy. And as he takes you through the first steps, it looks easy. And it should be easy. The number of successes required for each 4-hour block. So extended tests. Each test you do takes a certain amount of time. In this case, 4 hours. And in those 4 hours, you are given the opportunity to do every part of building this blade. If you do really well, crit, it might take that 4-hour block down in terms of the overall time. If you don't do very well, then it might take multiple 4-hour blocks. If we fail, we're looking at making a blade that was too brittle. Or a blade that ends up bending and you just didn't make it hard enough. Or a blade that you battered out too thin, so you're just going to have to send it back in again to get it, or worse, because it's two metals going together, you're just going to have to start again.
Could he invent Damascus steel?
Fold.
I'm sure it's in Nippon.
Although in that particular, quite. Yeah. Although in that particular issue, it would be folding the wrought iron into the steel, which is not what's looked for. Not quite what's looked for here. It doesn't need that many successes, though. But you're not that skilled yet.
No, he's strong. He's not very
dexterous.
Yeah.
This is not his forte yet. So it's a basic knife. 3 successes. You get 3 successes, you have finished a basic knife in your 4-hour block. It might not finish any knives in the blocks you have. Now, we are, as I say, doing this one slightly out of time. This is the evening work around the sessions when you're running around in Middenheim. And this is us catching up with how well he's done with his blades. So, he's got a couple of blocks, potentially each day, if he wants to stay up super late. Although he will get tired if he does so. He does have endurance, which is handy.
But he also knows, like, the festival is ending. And there seems to be a lot that might happen.
And you have a couple of days near the end of the festival between discovering everything and then afterwards going off and doing the thing where you've got full days to work as well.
But he's nose to the grindstone, almost literally.
Okay, so that means we've got a total of 5 potential tests for the first chunk and then another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That'll be 8 potential tests afterwards. So test number 1. And yes, our session today is smithing tests.
Nice. Right.
We're living at large.
That'd be a fail.
A good start. So
do you
we
want
start
number
with 0.
of fails?
Yes. No. If it's big, yeah. That'll be fun.
It is 4 fails.
Okay, good. So, yeah, he's screwed up.
First one.
So we can have our... first one, he battered it all down too much. He was too strong for it. And flattened it all out, much to the amusement of Arthur, as this first one is botched. Yeah. Second attempt for our
block. It looks so easy, Arthur. I don't know how. Second,
been doing it for worse. A while. Okay, so
5 fails.
Day 1, he has made 0 blades. Day 2,
doing well. Come on. Oh no.
Day 2, you're going to get charged for metal.
It's 100.
Oh wow! You can reroll all of this. You've got yourself your fortune points.
Yeah,
normal
I'm going to do a fortune point for the fumble because I don't want to kick me out of the forge. Laura will clap me over the head.
Break the hammer. Break the forge.
2 fails.
Tonk, tonk, tonk. Again, he gives advice that you're hitting it too hard. You need to be. You'll find, particularly when you're tampering the two together, you got to go slowly.
But I need to get 25 or 20 made. Can I not just go?
No. Take your time. Slow down. You're going too fast.
Right.
Far too fast. He just looks at you. You got the frame for it, he says, but instead of using your whole body, just use your arm.
Just mine.
All right, here we go. Next one.
Okay,
take your time.
Yes! 0 successes!
Sweet! Okay, so I'm going to let you add your dexterity bonus to this.
3.
Okay, because we are on full manufacturing mode. That's 3 successes.
Nice.
Okay, so on the second evening, after a frustrating day before, we get our first relatively poorly fashioned knife. But it is a knife.
He's keeping it.
It is almost exactly what you would expect from a human-made first attempt knife.
Baby's first knife.
It's pointy. It's battered a little bit. It's not a smooth finish. The handle is round, a bit rough, needs more polish, and then afterwards a little bit of varnish on it. But it's round. The brass, it's scored and it's marked in multiple places, but it's an actual knife.
It's lived in.
He's like... Well, you've made one, he says. However, the whole point of her saying you need to make more is that she'll select one, your best one.
Right.
Okay. Says, and that's the one she'll say you've made. This one, if this is your best one, you'll be at your 20 again.
But I can keep this one, right? Or are they the forges?
Well, he says, you drop off a coin or 2 and you can keep all of them if you want.
No, I just want to keep we'll see with the rest, but I'm definitely keeping my first.
He says... Right, this is her stock after all, and she does count.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Okay,
I've got my lord will pay for it. He's good for it.
Hey, that being the case, day 3.
Okay. Oh,
is that a good one or a bad one?
It's a fumble.
You got plus 20.
One. Oh, do I?
Yes.
Oh, then it's crit.
Because we've got time. You can take your time on this.
Okay. Just because my skill is at 43 and I just rolled 44, so that is a crit.
Taking everything that he'd learned the previous evening.
It's all in the elbow.
Everything that he had put together, he has a wee think. And this time, very carefully, has a think about what he wants to make, rather than just simply running at it. He sits down with a chalk over the large paving stone that he's working beside and marks out the shape that he wants this time. And looks at it because his first one was it was his first one, it was great, but it was a disappointment. It didn't look like the template. And he looks at it so that he's constantly got something to look at down on the floor. And he's bashing, and he's bashing, and he's bashing. Total successes. Is
Oh yeah, because I need to roll again.
Yeah, you do. You've got 4 so far.
13, and then if we're still adding
13, did you
dexterity
say?
bonus, that would be 16 in total.
60. Holy shitballs. That's a good number. Nice.
Beginner's luck.
And he makes a good knife. We're not talking one that's inscribed. We're not talking one that's anything sophisticated, but it is a good, solid dagger. And importantly, he makes it within the 4 hours, just over 4 hours, that he was told it should normally take to hopefully make one.
Nice.
But can he do it again?
So he'd like to ask Arthur, well, I'm going to try something slightly different by making this dagger.
He looks at it.
The
You've done
next
well,
one.
yeah? He says, let's say, did you use the glue? It's a black tarry glue that they used, which you did.
Yeah.
He says, you've not left any of it on. He says, oh, there's not even any coming out from blade. He says, normally you'll find apprentices. He says, give me your first one. There's like a big wodge of black goo on the side. He says, right there. He says, now that normally happens, but here, absolutely none. You've cleaned it off nice. He says, and right here, you polished up that brass like no one's business. See the 2 little pins that you put in? He says, they look lovely and they're symmetrical. One of the reasons we don't have you do double-edged blade when you're starting off, particularly when you're starting off with these, is getting symmetry right is really bloody hard. You've got your pedal grinder, trying to get it right. You go too far, then you turn it over. You go too far on the other side. He says, but your eye for symmetry is really quite good there. And that is a very good blade.
Oh, thank you. What I'm going to try for the next one I make is I'm going to use my talents. And what he wants to do is, while the blade is being pulled and he's hammering, he's going to I suppose the channel, but he wants to see where the actuate is on the blade, so where it's best to be released so that it's more malleable.
Through the course of the last days, evenings worth of work, he's noted he places it inside the furnace. It heats up, and it's coming out yellow hot, close to white to his vision, and the amount of actually dancing around it is significant. And to begin with, it's burning bright to his etheric sense also. Particularly difficult to differentiate from one part to another, but much like all heat, once he's starting to grow used to it, he's going into it again and again and again, his senses are also growing used to it. And he thinks that he can manage to keep that metal hot out for longer, meaning that he will be able to keep it malleable for longer. Now, he's currently working on 6 heats for the entirety of the blade, and then the last heat and quench. He thinks he could easily get it down to 4 without too much difficulty, in that he could just keep on exciting the edge of it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a multiplier. Say there's 6 there, and you whack it with your actuate, it multiplies up a little bit. There's 6,000 there, you whack it with the actuate, and whack it with the etheric manipulative capability that you have, and it pushes it up an almost similar percentage. So he thinks he could probably do it if you want to risk it, but he's also aware that there is a potential risk. This was back in the Gold College, less of an issue because the Gold College itself is protected against magical mishap. This place isn't. And there is an outside chance that it might screw up because of the amount of actuate that's involved.
Yeah.
It is a very big number, but equally, if you're going to try it anywhere, well, do it in a dwarven forge, right?
Yeah, surely you'd assume there's runes or something that is...
It definitely won't go wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
100%.
Yeah, it'll be fine. That being the case, do a separate channeling test on top.
So for the channel, I've just created.
Oh, nice. Good. Lessons
so
learned.
Hold on.
I need successes.
That'll be 10 in total.
Nice.
And then for the smith roll, that will be 5 successes in total.
Okay, that's good as well. He works late into the morning, fascinated by not just the processes, because it's simple process, something that his mind has been pretty much working around for now almost a decade. The idea of step by step doing everything correct to ensure you get the right outcome when you're casting your spells. His mind, particularly when it comes to the magical side of things, is process driven. There is a set number of steps to take, and it's simple. It's not like people. People are complicated. People react. People do things. This is easy. And the whole concept of the step by step by step process is something that almost brings a smile to his face. He's not just working. He's enjoying himself.
And this is, correct me if Dan, the player, is wrong.
Yes.
This is slightly different than what the Bright College would teach with Actuary. Actuary is an explosion outwards.
Yes.
But you draw in a separate thing to send out, whereas he's now recycling it almost.
Yes, and he's reusing and redoubling it. Now, this is something that the lore of metal uses to a significant degree. Lore of metal works with superheated metal frequently. Actually, is not normally used for this. However, there was one patriarch in particular, Patriarch Ruin, who was also Talabheklander, and was renowned for his ability to create artifacts. Many of the college's greatest artifacts were made by him. Indeed, he was working in more than just simply metal. He was also working in materials. He was the individual who created, for the very first time, the full set of magisterial uniforms that were fireproof for the college. Before that, not a fun time to be a Bright Wizard. They frequently burnt out their uniforms and were found in a burnt out mess, naked somewhere on a battlefield, half dusted, their hair boiled away by whatever scalding, terrible heats they had almost certainly accidentally unleashed. And he's aware that the mythology, that there's a certain methodology that could be applied. He just doesn't know what it is. And sadly, the college, for all that he was vaguely interested back in those days, has no interest in their apprentices going down those routes. As a magister, not a wizard, a magister, you're in a position where you can access the college magisterial records, which means that you can access, for example, possibly the old Patriarch Ruin's original notes on how he forged weapons. But before then, you can't do it. And the college only allows that as an open option if you're taking on apprentices, which is why you have to be a magister. So there's a certain amount of experimentation going on here, presumably the same experimentation that Ruin once did himself back in the day. And it's fascinating because he knows that the Gold Wind does this relatively easily. And the Bright Wind doesn't. It's explosive and fast, but it also burns. And it can burn consistently and, with the correct spell, eternally. And finding the flow of the actuary that's in it, finding how it's bound by the metal casing, and you presume the chamon that's stopping it from moving out as well. The material effect mixed with the magical effect, and the parts of the winds you can't quite see.
And his classic trick of looking for what's not there.
Exactly.
Is that...
and that's exactly it. He starts seeing that there are... Imagine the blade, if we were to view it as a magnetic object inside a textbook, and you would see all the bands of the magnetic power coming out from that ferric piece of iron you've got in front of you. The chamon is somewhat similar to that and bounds everything inside. And it moves in set patterns. You can't see that. The chamon is really difficult to see.
Yeah.
But the actuary darts in between it and it ignites. Now, presumably the gold wizard is manipulating this matrix of gold, which has its bounded edges, and they concentrate the heat that they put in and allow it to continue. In your case, you've got the heat, but it's looking to constantly break free from what you've got. So what you're looking to do, in many respects, is build dams inside the matrices that are put in place by the winds he can't see. And that is a fascinating few hours for him. By the end of it, he can hold up the blade that's been in the furnace, and he holds it up, and he batters it and holds it up, and an hour later, it's still holding its heat. He critted, it helps, but it's holding its heat, meaning that he can significantly reduce the need to go back and reheat, but more importantly, significantly increase the malleability of the metal until he releases it upon his command. The big one is, though, can he tie it off? And I'm going to lay it down to a single test here. In that, once he's effectively channeled it all into place, is he capable of moving his concentration off it? Because he's largely set a flow that goes and circulates himself, or does he need to constantly monitor? So let's find out how it goes. He's critted, which means I'm going to give you the test to do this. Normally you wouldn't. So let's do a channeling test and see how this turns out.
7 successes. I think it might be 8, but I think
it's close enough. It's a good success. He manages to do it mostly instinctually. In that once he's got it going, he hasn't needed to use any words of magic. The words of magic would be to create the heat in the first place. But the heat has been made by the forge. So he pulls it out of there, and using his channeling skill, he holds it all into place, and then almost without having to think, he can just bang, and as he comes down, he's moving the heat, twisting it around, moving it into place, keeping the malleability. And for this blade, 3 hours, and he's got a blade by the end of it. Blade's nowhere near as good as his first blade. Its shape, it's interesting. All three of them, all 3 different shapes. Yeah. It's not consistent, but yeah, it's exactly what it is, artisanal. But we've got ourselves blade number 3, and importantly, he's also learned something that will mean that the process is now, for him, a 3.5 hour base.
Could I also lobby to have a stress reduction? Because I think that kind of thing becomes meditational.
Yeah, we'll do that for the end.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's even required for a lobby. I think that's definitely going to be the case for him. I think this is so much easier than people. This is so much easier than cultists. So much easier than...
And it puts it all...
Yeah, it does. He's got something to concentrate on. And as he goes, he realizes the differences between the 2 metals. He's learning how the heat is held inside the medium grade steel, how the heat is held in the metal to the other side, the wrought iron, how the heat is held by the brass as he bashes that into place at the end, and how he has to be careful about that, how the wood works. And he can feel the last vestiges of fading gyron sitting inside the wood also. How that goes on to the pedal turn, and he's spinning that down, then smoothing it off, then sanding it all down at the end, working away at the edge of the blade until eventually his sharpened edge. It's very meditative for him. Yeah. Let's do another test, please. Just tradesmith this time. You won't even need the channeling test in this one.
So that's just...
Because, you critted it. I'm quite happy for it just down to 3.5.
So that'll be 4 successes.
4 successes. That's another blade done. Blade number 4. Nice. And this is our last
of the
1,
day.
2, 3. No. That's our last from leading up to the end of all the time inside the festival before you have full days to yourself. Okay, so we're now on to full days to yourself, but he largely is down at Forge, doing forging. So we're now down there, so test number 1.
Test number 1. 0 fails.
Fail. Yeah. Okay, so didn't do it. Test number 2.
I think actually, no, I think I'll fake.
Fortune point.
Yeah.
Did you say 0 fails?
Yeah.
Also,
here's plus 1. Yeah. So, and then my dexterity.
Okay, so that takes blade number 5.
Yeah. And then
nice.
Number 6 is 8 successes.
Nice.
Again, I'm still adding my dex bonus, right?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So 8. Yeah.
On a successful roll.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then,
it means that your dexterity is high enough that if you pass, you've got your blade. And it's then down to the quality of the blade that you've made. Yeah. Normally on an extended test, because these are super simple ones. This is not a complicated long sword or some equivalent. Normally on an extended test, you keep on doing it till you got the requisite number of successes, and the last test determines how the overall quality of the blade. So it might mean that on the last test, if you roll, for example, just a bare pass, you might go, I'll do it again, but you might end up screwing up the whole thing by pushing it on too far.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is
number 7.
This is blade number 7 on our 4th test here.
4 successes.
Okay, 7 is done.
You have time for 1 more?
Oh, we've got time for 4 more tests.
Oh, in the day?
Yeah, because it's...
Oh, we're doing...
Well, we're doing the whole block.
Yeah.
We're just doing the lot.
Cool.
Get it all covered.
That's the fail.
That's fail. We re-rolling?
Yes, we will.
Nice.
That is 5 successes.
8. Nice. Next test.
5 successes again.
Nice.
Same number.
And one more test.
I am definitely fortune pulling that. That was not an 88. Don't do something awful, Andy. 3 successes.
3 successes. That'll do just nice. So, by the time he has finished the vast majority of the festival, and before they are heading downwards into the next step of the adventure, he has 10 of his blades finished. Valora pops in near the end of it and takes a look at what you've got. She scratches her face. She looks at the blades. She looks at your proudly held blade sitting upon your waist. Nods. Takes out a pair of tongs, refusing to touch them directly. Passes between them. Nods. Pulls out one of them. Holds it up. Her big thick fingers. Pops it down. Pops it to the side. And the others pushes them off. Pointing at it. I want them all to look like that now. She says, we might not see each other for a while given you're heading off towards your death.
Yeah.
He says,
it's likely.
But one day, whether it's a week, a month, a year, one day I'll see you again. I'll expect 10 of those. You got 10 more you owe me.
10 more or 9 including that one?
10 more.
10 more, okay.
It says, and that's your standard. Slides it over towards you. I'm going to be heading up into mountains. I've decided to chase after this Goog lot.
Oh, Dara and her clan.
Well, they're going to die. I'm packing up for you. I'm not selling it, but I'm packing it up. So I won't be here when you're back.
Okay. Is there anywhere I'll be able to reach you to show you the daggers? Or
She holds out a large key with a big parallelogram of a head at the end of it. It says, if you need to forge, it says, when you're here, you got key.
Thank you.
You do not run business.
No. I just make for myself.
Point. That metal there, if you use any of it, you're replacing it. Now, you were given bars, simple rods to work with. If you need to make your own rods, you can use the metal down there, but you replace it, you understand? Anything you take, you replace. And if you break any of the tools here...
Replace them.
If you break any of the tools, you do not replace them. You tell me.
Oh, okay. Tell you and replace them?
No.
No.
You just tell me.
What if it's from a dwarf?
No.
Okay.
Not unless I know them.
Right.
It says, may your gods look after you.
Thank you.
I've heard tale of what's down
watch
there.
Over you as well in your quest.
I don't intend to die up there in mountains.
No. And if you
I'm going to supply them with help, that's all.
If you can save the princess, please do.
There's no saving her. No saving her entire family. They've made their choice. They won't turn back. That's it. They're going in now.
There could be a chance they survive.
No. No, I don't think so. I've seen this before down in South. You see, if he'd been a good man, he'd have made sure that he had himself a son or a daughter. A son would be better, more likely of having children if it's a son that he could leave behind. But the last of their line's going down now. They're all going.
And if you tried to get away.
No. If she tried to get away, she'd have got away. You have got to understand. You're human. Humans tend to take what we say in a different way to how we intend. We've got different levels of argumentation. And she was just simply putting up a dispute, saying, I wish it were another way. But she did not say or use the correct tone to show that she would not accept. You could hear in her voice she'd already resigned. She made her notes. That's it. From what I hear about where they're going, they're dead. But that's why I'm going. It's an old. There might be something down there they can use. And that's where I come in.
Yeah. And as I said, if there is anything, I'm already in your debt, but I'd be more so.
She pulls at a long braid, bound in place at the bottom with stone, a little dwarf head. It's my great-grandfather. He could smell out runes. He says, I've got his nose. That is what might save them. Something old down there. If there's something old, something they can get to before they are all killed. Something they can sneak into. Something that was theirs. And maybe my grandfather can help them. Taps her nose.
Pudgy finger. Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, may your kind and ancestors watch over.
Right. They were bad.
Mm-hmm.
That one is acceptable. Keep it. And that was it. That's all we have to do. Forging forward. He has forged half of his blades. Not all of them, but it's definitely a really good step. And with a dwarf who was not at all unimpressed with one of your pieces of work, which could be far worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good job. So with that, I say thanks very much. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.